All right, all right, all right. That is how you rebound from a Game 1 loss.
100 Thieves dismantling Immortals Nexus as slow as they can to get the kills, putting their first win of the season on the board.
Granted, it was against Immortals, so I'm not sure what all we were necessarily expecting. Not to discredit Immortals, I think they are going to get some good wins over teams later on in the season as they develop a little bit more. But yeah, pretty stock standard win that I must say, fairly happy about all things considered. Yesterday was one of those days where, for those that don't know, I have LCS media press credentials, so I'm able to do interviews pretty much the entire LCS day. I wasn't able to do it during day one because I was at Brookland at the bar, but yesterday was my first experience of like games start at 5, and then you're waiting like 15-20 minutes after each game to find out if you have an interview, and then doing the interviews while the next game starts. And it was a really interesting kind of learning curve. The interviews were great, but like in terms of watching the 100 Thieves game, I obviously missed the entire draft and like the first 2 or 3 minutes of the game because I'm interviewing players from the game before, which perfectly fine. I'll be able to catch up. It's 2 minutes. It's not that big of a deal, all things considered. But it's interesting to now understand the dynamic of how I'm going to have to watch games this year compared to prior years. I'm no longer just a fan when I'm at home doing media, but whenever I'm at bars, then I'll fully be able to just, have that experience of watching it like everybody else and with everybody else. Now that said, yesterday's game worried me a little bit because we were 0-1. This is a game that we really needed to win, and Immortals are no slouches. And yes, we were able to take the win. But starting in draft, for those that don't remember, starting in the bot lane, Double Lift, when Senna came out, had this really weird period where he just couldn't play her. And it wasn't that it was like decent, but he couldn't do it. No, it was bad for a while. It got better by the end. Obviously, TSM went on to win their title in 2020, and actually I think he played Senna at various points throughout that playoff run and played it decently well. But it was one of those where when it came to new champions, I wasn't sure how Double Lift would hold up. So when we first picked Zeri, I know he's played it in Champions Queue and Solo Queue, and I've seen him obviously talk about it a good bit. But it's one of those, okay, is this going to be a Senna moment? Is the new champion for him going to be a little bit too rough? It's like if he ever plays Neela, I'm going to have the same worry of like, okay, can he actually do this? Because we know the meta is going to shift towards his favor in 13.2 whenever the IE and Kanori Quick Blades changes to 40% crit. Like, obviously a lot of the champions that he plays are going to become back in meta, but I was a little bit worried, and luckily, all things considered, it worked out. You had the 2v1 dive bot lane, which originally I was like, okay, well, we're trading 1-for-1, but if you listen to Double Lift's interview after the game was done with Bwipo, it should give you a little bit more confidence.
But I've seen too many times, from my perspective, this is obviously up to everyone's experience in the game. It is way worse if the enemy AD carry is diveable. You should just dive him, kill him, 450 gold, right? I mean, obviously, I think Alan misplayed here and took one too many turret shots.
Sure.
But, and then you also get 2 plates. So the overall gold that you're getting and denying, look, he loses not only these 10 creeps, but he loses the entire next cannon wave. I mean, it's a 1,000 gold swing, and can the enemy team realistically use Herald?
Look, I'm a gold and soon-to-be plat player, hopefully. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I understand the mechanics of the game and what good trades are, what trades are good, what trades are bad, etc. And obviously, this is learning for me. Now I know. It's like now I know whenever I go into my solo queue games that we can dive 2v1 bot lane so long as just the support dies and we deny wave and we get extra gold. That's one of the things I love about watching pro play is you can convert it to your own game. That unlike regular sports where you watch somebody do something incredible and that's just never going to be applicable to your life because I'm not going out and playing American football. I do have a soccer match today at 3 o'clock though, so that'll be interesting. Bucio's now 2 games into the LCS, and it's pretty standard. I mean, in the Azir matchup yesterday, he played pretty well, all things considered. They were winning lane, and he was not the reason why they lost that. Today, he played Yuumi, and obviously they smashed. He died once during that dive, but that was literally it. He never died ever again. And yeah, I mean, not really much to say. Until we see him play a Pyke, a Camille, a Zoe, one of these, really aggressive supports, that we've seen him play in solo queue and that he's known for, it's going to be very hard to get a good judgment on things because Doublelift is going to get the eye of almost everybody, as was evident by this game as well. Shifting to the mid lane, Bjergsen had a hell of a comeback game. Like, didn't die the entire time, I don't think. Yeah, I don't think he died. And he played a scaling champion that worked really well. Victor just seems to suit him good. As for Closer in the jungle, this is kind of one of those matchups where I feel bad that Immortals lost, because for those that don't know or don't follow 100 Thieves as deeply, Ken V played for 100 Thieves Academy, and I think, did he play for 100 Thieves Next? I think he might have played for 100 Thieves Next. But nevertheless, he was partners with Tenacity for a while, and Ken V was actually the more hyped up prospect going into last year. So he went to Immortals after holding out for a bit to try and see if he could get on a top team. He wasn't able to, and now unfortunately he's stuck in Elo Hell at Immortals. But I always feel bad whenever we beat him. Like, I love Kemby. He's a great guy, and I want to see him do well, just not against us. And he didn't, because Closer played Sejuani and had a Sejuani game. Like, I don't know what else you say about that. Closer is going to be one of those interesting marks to watch this entire season, simply because last year with the players that he had, you saw him transition towards like a late game carry role, where like, yeah, other players on his team might be able to do a little bit more in lane, but like it was always like when mid and late game came, you were watching Closer every single time. And now, given the shift in resources that are on the team, you have Doublelift that can carry games. You have Bjergsen that can do the same. You have Tenacity that clearly, as a carry player, can do the same as well. It's like Closer's filling in differently. And I don't think the players that we have are going to allow Closer to be this pop-off mid-late game carry every game, which in my opinion is a good thing. It makes us more dynamic. We can shift strategies a little bit more. We can invest resources in one spot that we don't have to invest in another. But it definitely is a little bit jarring to watch early on if you were a fan of the team last year. Personally, I'm happy with it. I don't mind it. Closer can play whatever style that he wants. I have faith in him as an individual to out-mechanic anybody, and having these great players around him should actually take some pressure off his shoulders that he otherwise would have had to worry about. But I don't know. I think all things are fine. I wouldn't worry, and I saw Jad and Emily talk about this a little bit on their JLXP episode, but I think we're fine. Tenacity in the top lane. This is an interesting one, because obviously all eyes are going to be on him to compete at the highest level and transition into the LCS. Re-referencing the JLXP episode, they were a little bit more critical of him, understandably. He was the reason why Fudge got ahead yesterday in the Jax counterpick matchup by one auto, which again still sucks. Today he goes 0-3 on Renekton, but the reason why he goes 0-3 the first death I don't think is excusable. He dies with everybody literally just crashing bot lane. Like, there, 3 of the enemy team was crashing bot as we were taking Rift Herald. We knew it was coming and he still died. If he can get out of that situation, that speaks highly to his map awareness, situational awareness, and just the ability to see these things coming. He did not. He dies. That, I think, is definitely a little bit of a red X. But the 2 other deaths after that definitely seemed like it was more team saying go in, whether that's on Tenacity's side or somebody else's side. Everybody wanted to go in. He goes in, he dies twice, but he deals a ton of damage and basically stalls for his team to allow them to come in and clean up the kills. I think it is a little bit worrying when you think about that in terms of our overall team, because we should be able to follow up on those quicker. The timing difference there is what brought on the 9-man sleep from Spica, like the inability to push forward. So it's either one of 2 things: either Tenacity is pulling the trigger too early, or nobody else is following up quick enough and committing the resources for it, which is a common theme that you saw with Bjergsen and Doublelift teams in the past. So I'm hoping, rather than Tenacity scaling back and not doing these plays, I hope everybody else pushes up forward. I would like to see that more. I don't want to see what we've historically seen from some of these players like Bjergsen and Doublelift. I'd like to see the opposite. It's what Broken Blade and Spica did so well, and what Broken Blade still does well on this new G2 roster with somebody like Yike alongside him. Like, they're just incredible. Looking ahead to next week, which actually I don't even know who we play. We play Dignitas and TSM, which Dignitas, didn't look great this week. Granted, they still didn't have their full roster due to visa issues, so I'll cut them some slack, but realistically, I would expect us to win that. And TSM, I would have expected coming into this week to be a fairly easy matchup, but TSM outperformed their expectations. I don't think that's indicative of where TSM will end up at the end of the split, but this is one of those games to gauge very early on, okay, do we still have some bumps in the road that we need to work out going forward? Obviously, I'm expecting us to lose some games early, and if a team comes out hot like TSM, this is a game that it's not really a trap game, but I would expect us to potentially lose games like this early on. And I'd be fine with that so long as we show signs of development. So, could we lose that? Yeah. I'm hoping for a 2-0 week. If we get 2-0 this week, going into the following, whenever we have, I don't know the exact schedule, but whenever we do face FlyQuest, when we face TL after they've recovered from their really, really bad start, when we play EG, teams like that, like I want to have as good of a record going into them as we can. But obviously, again, the expectation is that we stumble early. So, not going to be too upset. Overall, very happy with this week in general. It feels great to have the LCS back. It feels great to have 100 Thieves back. I've missed this a lot. I missed having that reason to wake up on Thursday or Friday now and just like, yeah, throw on the 100 Thieves shirt. Which, by the way, tip for those that don't know, the white, great. Like this is the cream hoodie that like everybody wanted originally. As you can see, there's a few stains that comes with the territory of getting white clothing. I personally prefer the reds of 100 Thieves to the whites now, given that I make this messy, and also my wife washed one of her red shirts by accident with my white t-shirt for 100 Thieves, and it kind of tie-dyed it, which I actually like better than just the plain, but nevertheless. Yeah, look at colors other than white if you're somebody that spills all your stuff on you, but I will say the merch line looks great in general. They're actually just teasing another golf line, which I am 100% getting the one golf shirt that they have. I hope they release it in red and not just white, but we will see. Any other 100 Thieves news? The graphic that they're using on Twitter, I can't say I'm the biggest fan of, all things considered. The half blurry Bjergsen with some misspellings on the tweet. By all means, I'm not one to talk on misspellings because I spell as bad as a third grader, if I'm being completely honest with you. But it's just one of those that, like, I would expect somebody who, like, if you work on socials like that consistently, unless that's a specific choice or like an individual from a company side, I wouldn't expect that. General around the LCS news, it seems like we're in a decent spot. Viewership was pretty good, all things considered. Not as low as I expected it to be, slightly higher than the average of last year. The question is going to be how bad is the dip? And once again, the personalities coming on broadcast like Bwipo. I love Bwipo as a player, to be very clear, but Bwipo as a color commentator and a caster is 20 times better. And that's not because I don't love the player, I do. He's built for broadcast. The dude in the CLG game probably took less breaths than actual CLG fans as they were clutching their pearls holding on to the game. He's legitimately incredible. One of the best talents that I think anybody can have. If we can find a way to keep him in North America as a color commentator or like a LCS analyst broadcast person whenever he does retire, then oh boy, are we set. However, I do worry that he's going to go back to the LEC because it makes sense. He's got family back there, and it's going to suck when he eventually goes away. But I'm curious to see who they bring on now for personalities. Now that you got QD Cinderella and Bwipo, arguably two of the biggest ones you could have, who's next? Like, sure, you can do some players. They had Vulcan on broadcast doing one of the cast and in between segments, but like creator personality wise, who are you going to find that does incredibly well on camera? I want to see, because I think it's going to be really interesting. Also, shout out to Con for Nick. Shout out to Nick, who's one of my subscribers on Twitch and in our Discord, and he held up a sign apparently get Dave on broadcast. I appreciate it, man, but I'm out in New York, and the odds of that happening, slim to none. But thank you all for tuning in to another episode of TFC. I will catch you next week. We've got more games to talk about. Other than that, I've got interviews coming out all this week. One of which with the coach of 100 Thieves, Cos. I think you guys might like it. We'll see.